So this is a thinking of playing a video on the Sands of War. Frank Chadwick again. Again, the first battle series from GDW. This one was published in 1993, I think. 1991. The subtitle is Tactical Combat in the Middle East, 1941 to 1991. The game comes with 16 5-color maps. Each map is 11 by 17 inches. Comes with 5 die-cut counter sheets with a total of 880 counters and markers. A ton of counters and markers. We have game markers for smoke and concealment. We have rubble and logistical stores. We have different types of entrenchments, firing pits, wire. We have bunkers and trenches, entrenchments. We have minefields and breached minefields. We have different markers for command and control rules. These are staff planning markers. We have markers, two-sided markers, one side for the green forces, one side for the brown forces, for units in firing position. We have ECM markers, electronic countermeasures markers. We have artillery impact markers. We have illumination markers, reactive armor detonated markers. We have ammo reduced and ammo depleted markers. We have damaged bridges, destroyed bridges. We have dummy markers for both sides. We have burned wrecks and burnt out wrecks, which are handled differently in the rules. And then we have a bunch of these gray units, which is a really cool concept that I wish designers would do this more. So these are weapon systems. They're gray because either side uses them. These are extra weapons, extra capabilities. So we have Carl Gustav rifles. We have Milan missiles. We have Dragon. We have AT-3s, RPG-7s, and so forth. So these can be added to units. They are basically missile systems, recoilless rifles. Here's an AT-4. Here's what else do we have? So it's mainly those in this game. Recoilless rifle, AT. What's this? Flamethrower. Shoulder-launched anti-air missiles, and so forth. So pretty cool idea. So those are generally the game markers. And then we have the forces, right? So we have green forces and brown forces, and these counter mixes are pretty impressive. So we're talking from Mark 6B tanks all the way up to Crusader, all the way up to a T7 or T-72 Golf, T-72 M1, So a huge, huge variety. T-55s, T-54s, T-62s, T-34/85s, Crusaders, just a ton of vehicles, a bunch of specialized vehicles, SA-13, 2 S1 122, just a ton of different vehicles, rotary wing air, fixed wing air, there's a Mirage, a Me-8 Charlie, BMP-1s, just a ton. Transport helicopter, attack helicopters, all different sorts of armored fighting vehicles and APCs. So here's a BTR-60 PB, a Type 63 APC, just a ton, and many, many more. You also have basically field artillery and different types of mortars, field guns, 25-pounder, anti-air units, just a ton, anti-tank missile units. And then we even have different types of specialized infantry. You have patrol units, like that, a patrol unit. And in this game, the flip side is the pinned side, or with vehicles like with this M48A2, you flip it over, it is the damaged side. The values are already adjusted for you. So we have patrol units, we have engineer units, we have missile team as distinct units, separate units. We have commanders, we have FOs, forward observers. We have medium machine guns. So all those types of specialized leg units. And then we have separate for each side. We have distinct. We have regular infantry, militia infantry, light infantry, and then elite infantry. Here's a green elite infantry. So you have distinct types of infantry. I like that. So yeah, just a huge medium trucks, light trucks, heavy trucks. So you have, which I like. I don't like these things to be abstracted out. You have Jeeps, you have medium trucks, you have heavy trucks, and you have light trucks. And you have different types. You have Humvees, you have Jeeps armed with machine guns. I think you even have missile. I think you even have missile armed Jeeps. So all these different types of units to play with, basically. The game comes with an 8-page booklet, the Jumpstart rules, which is a great concept. I like this a lot. Basically, the Jumpstart rules get you right in. It's really nice that they actually give you 2 Jumpstart scenarios, which are not separate from the main rules. When you go to the main rules, you can play the same scenarios again using more rules. So these are 2 scenarios: Palmyra Road and Encounter on the Ismailia Road. So these are 2 scenarios that are taken from the full rules and scoped down to use just these Jumpstart rules. Great idea. So Jumpstart rules are really just moving and shooting, but that's okay. It's a great way to get into the system. But I'm going to pass right by this because the idea here is to play the Sands of War the full gamut of rules as presented. So that's the 8-page Jumpstart rules folder with 2 introductory scenarios, and then we have an 80-page game manual. This is a bound book. 80 pages, includes basic and advanced rules, historical notes, and 31 scenarios. So for the general rules, you have movement, visibility and spotting, attacks, and command and morale. Then you go to advanced rules. The advanced rules include missiles, troop-carried weapons. Troop-carried weapons are the gray special weapons we were looking at before. Those are the troop-carried weapons. We have rules for electronic warfare. We have general support artillery, advanced munitions, including dual-purpose improved conventional munitions, artillery scattered mines, aluminum rounds, smoke, and gas. We have amphibious and aquatic movement. We have obstacles and fortifications, including entrenchments, AT ditch, bunker, barbed wire, minefield, log sites. Log sites. That doesn't really fit, but anyways. Under obstacles and fortifications, we have log sites, we have engineered demolitions, crossing obstacles with AVLBs, and bridging waterways. We have fighter bombers. We have helicopters. And we have limited visibility. Then we have optional rules, extended line of sight, which we will play with, overstacking, which we'll play with, reaction movement, which we'll play with, expanded command and control, we will try that, taking command and regrouping, cohesion, we'll play with cohesion as well, stabilized guns and burning wrecks. Then we have all of these scenarios. We have, they're broken up as usual for the first battle series. They're broken up by sections for historical periods. So we have World War II in the desert. We have Israeli War of Independence, the Sinai War, the 6-Day War, 73 Arab-Israeli War, Lebanon, the Iran-Iraq War, the Gulf War, and then designing your own scenarios. A lot of stuff, a lot to pull in. So I went ahead and I decided that I would go back to, I say back to because I tried to play this scenario a couple years ago when I was trying to get into Sands of War completely. Definitely had some stalls in the past, so this is a return with a determination to at least make a lot more progress than I did before. So yeah, I'm returning to this particular scenario. It's called Ambush at Mitla Pass, October 30th, 1956, 1400 to 2000 hours. So we'll look at this this scenario in more detail as a workup to the first turn. So first, the historical background. This is lengthy, and it's I like this a lot. I mean, for anybody who likes the old days where you got a lot of text, historical background, period, essays, and so on and so forth, well, you definitely get them here. So this is the historical background to the scenario. Make sure I'm not hitting my units over here. So Ambush at Mitla Pass. Sinai Offensive in 1956 started with the drop of Lieutenant Colonel Rafaul Aitan's parachute battalion at the eastern exit of the Mitla Pass, the only practical route from the southern part of the Suez Canal to the central Sinai. The rest of the 202nd Parachute Brigade, under Colonel Ariel Arik Sharon, then made an epic advance across the central Sinai, overcoming several Egyptian units along the way, to reinforce Aitan's paratroopers. Sharon's brigade included the other two parachute battalions of the 202nd Brigade, plus a battery of 120mm mortars and a brigade reconnaissance company. For the drive across the Sinai, it was also reinforced with a company of 14 AMX-13 tanks, a battery of 25-pounder field guns, and 2 companies of Nahal paratroopers. One of Sharon's battalions was carried in half-tracks, while the rest rode in a mixture of brand new military trucks and requisitioned civilian vehicles of various sorts. Although Egyptian garrisons in the central Sinai were numerically weak, the terrain was a major obstacle in and of itself. It is particularly impressive, therefore, that Sharon managed to link up with Eitan's battalion only 30 hours after crossing the frontier. Sharon's action following the link-up are considerably less admirable. The Egyptians had reacted to the Israeli attack. By the way, I want to say, I guess I'll interject notes as I go. I like that the historical background does not lionize the Israelis here, so I'll repeat that again. Sharon's action following the link-up are considerably less admirable. The Egyptians had reacted to the Israeli attack by sending the 5th Infantry Battalion, reinforced with a company of the 6th Battalion, from the 2nd Infantry Brigade to guard Mitla Pass, while the advanced guard, 2 companies of the 5th Battalion, had raced ahead to the pass. The main body had become bogged down on the poor roads and had been attacked repeatedly by the Israeli Air Force, which reported the force destroyed as a combat unit. This report was passed on to Sharon. When Sharon arrived at the pass, he found Eitan entrenched to the east of the actual mouth of the pass. He considered this to be a fairly weak defensive position and requested permission to move his brigade into the pass itself. The Israeli High Command turned his request down. There was a large force of Egyptian armor north of Sharon, but its attention was riveted on the developing battle at Abu Aghaila to the east of it. The Israeli General Staff felt that if Sharon simply laid low, it would continue to ignore him, but that an aggressive move into the pass might attract its attention. Since Sharon had virtually no anti-tank weapons, an attack by this force might be disastrous. Upset at this limitation on his freedom of action, Sharon requested permission to probe the pass with a small patrol. Permission for this was granted, with the provision that he not become involved in heavy fighting, and that he not commit any major units to action. Sharon had left his 3rd Battalion as a garrison along the way, and most of his tanks had broken down fairly early in the advance across the rough ground. This again is a reality that war games should capture at some point. You know, tanks are notoriously, I'm not going to say unreliable, but they are notoriously complicated systems to keep fully operational. I'll just put it that way. I'll leave it that way. This left him with his brigade reconnaissance company, 2 battalions of paratroopers, 2 Nahal companies, and about a platoon of tanks. For the reconnaissance patrol, Sharon allocated his remaining tanks, 2 companies of the 2nd Parachute Battalion in half-tracks, and the brigade reconnaissance company riding in trucks. Half of the mortars would accompany the patrol for support. The whole operation would be under the command of Major Mordecai Gur, commander of the 2nd Battalion, but would be accompanied by Lieutenant Colonel Yitzhak Hofi, the brigade's second-in-command. Sharon was convinced that the Egyptian unit earmarked to defend the pass had been wiped out by air attacks, and he impressed this view upon the leaders of the patrol. Their orders were to push aggressively through the pass and overwhelm any light resistance they might encounter. This is an interesting lesson in tactical understanding and impressions and expectations, and how they interact with how tactical actions actually develop. The Egyptian force had not been wiped out, however. It had lost many vehicles and most of its reinforcing heavy weapons, such as mortars and recoilless rifles, but its infantry was relatively intact and now manned a series of caves and fortifications along the edges of the pass. The Israeli force was led by Gur's headquarters group in half-tracks, followed by the tanks, and then the 2 parachute companies, and finally the recon company in trucks. The mortar platoon remained in the rear to provide supporting fire if necessary. As the head of the column reached a narrow point in the pass known as the Haitan Defile, it came under heavy fire. Gur ordered the column to speed up, but then came to a derelict Egyptian truck, a victim of the previous day's airstrikes, which blocked the road. In attempting to bypass it, his half-track was disabled. The rest of the armored force sped by, unaware of their commander's predicament, and raced further on for more than a kilometer before halting and forming a defensive hedgehog. The truck-mounted reconnaissance company had remained behind with the mortars, its unarmored trucks unsuited to running a gauntlet of fire. Lieutenant Colonel Hofi, with the recon company, sent word back to Sharon, who decided to commit additional troops to extract the surrounded combat patrol. He sent 2 more companies of paratroopers along with the rest of his mortars and artillery. Meanwhile, Gurr had gathered a few of his troops around him and had ordered the advanced part of the patrol to fight its way back east. At the same time, the reconnaissance company launched a dismounted attack up the pass walls against the entrenched infantry. As it did so, however, it came under a heavy crossfire from the opposite side of the pass and was forced to withdraw. At about the same time, 4 Egyptian meteors arrived over the battlefield, and or meteors. About the same time, 4 Egyptian meteors arrived over the battlefield and bombed the Israeli mortar positions. When the Israeli reinforcements arrived near dusk, they dismounted and launched simultaneous attacks against both the north and south slopes. By dark, the 2 forces linked up and managed to evacuate the wounded. The Israelis suffered between 100 and 200 casualties, and the Egyptians lost at least as many. The following scenario covers Major Gurr's attempt to break out of the pass on his own prior to the arrival of reinforcements. So these are all of the battle conditions. This game is played on 2 of the 11 by 17 inch maps, arrayed short end to short end, creating a long, thin map. So this is not going to be able to get anywhere near the whole map in the camera here, but basically this would be the pass, Mitla Pass. This would be the Haitan Defile mentioned. So we have, I'll go east to west. Back east we have, as mentioned in the historical introduction here, we have a force of, or we have the Israeli mortar force. Back here we have the Israeli, we have a commander with lead infantry and the 120 millimeter mortar with some infantry for security. All right, I guess I can adjust the. Here we go. There's that. There's the Eastern Force. Mortar, lead infantry, commander, security. They're in a town here, a village. Let me go back over here now. I'm not going to move anything right now because stuff will be removed when we start playing turn 1. But basically, so if this is Haitan Defile, part of Mitla Pass here, the commander, make sure I have the Gurr. There we go. Yeah, so this would be, I think this is Gurr, the commander, who got fouled up by the burnt out Egyptian truck right there. And these are the Egyptian forces. They're all in either entrenchments or bunkers. So they're all arrayed to mass fires at this choke point. And then over here we have the far western force, truck mounted, or I'm sorry, half-track mounted elite infantry, as well as 3, 1, no, that's 2. Where are they? Oh yeah. Okay. So the reconnaissance units are over here with the mortar. Reconnaissance units, mortar, commander. Gur left there, stranded in Haitan Defile, and then the half-track mounted infantry over here with another commander. That's what it is. So 3 Egyptian or Israeli positions, and the Egyptians massed at the Haitan Defile. There we go. Okay, so there are no key towns or villages in this scenario. The terrain. Now this is interesting. I'll go over it quickly, but I really like, and we'll look at this in more detail when we play, but I really like that this has a variable terrain. Again, we'll go over this later, but you just go through depressions are impassable gorges, rough terrain is broken ground, vegetation is scrub, and slopes are steep. We'll go over what that means when we start playing. The atmospherics, light variable wind, no precipitation, normal visibility. The advanced rules we're playing with are fortifications and obstacles. Obviously those are the entrenchments and the bunkers that the Egyptians are occupying. And then we have the two Egyptian meteor units. So we'll be playing with the fighter bombers advanced rules. So the special rules include impassable gorges. All depressions are impassable. Cohesion, if playing with the cohesion rules, which we will, Israeli units are high cohesion units. So we'll review that when we get to it. The objective, the Israeli forces must exit as many units as possible from out the east map edge. So basically, the Israelis need to retrograde back to the east and get off the east edge of the map here. That way. The Egyptian forces must attempt to stop this advance. The scenario will last 12 turns. I should point out that the first battle series finally included in a game some type of player aid. So we do have a turn record track, so we'll go to 12 turns. And we have a command sheet and general information tracking over here. We'll go over that in more detail. What I've done here is I took a medium mortar marker like that. Just a medium mortar counter. I put it on 12 to show 12 HE rounds for that 120 millimeter mortar on the board. So that's the ammunition for the mortar. And over here, I've just chosen to. No, we're about to get to the Israeli forces, so I'll wait. So we have the Israeli forces are green. We have 3 formations. We have a headquarters group. Headquarters group is the one that's stranded in the center. This is the headquarters group. 2nd Parachute Battalion. They have a morale of 1. So what I did is, because this force is the only one on the board with a tank, I take an AMX-13 counter, sorry, not a marker. I take an AMX-13 counter and I put it on the 1 for this track, so that I can track, without having to write it down, I track the morale, the morale of that force. And then the second force is this one, the half-track mounted infantry there in the west. So that's the half-track mounted infantry. And so again, to indicate that force, I take a half-track counter, and I put it on 4 for its current morale level. And finally, we have the rear element combat patrol. That's the reconnaissance infantry and mortar back on the east side of the map. And because that is basically the elite reconnaissance force, I take an elite squad counter, platoon, and put it on 2 for its current morale. So I just used the rules do divide the Israelis into these three forces, which you do have to keep separate to use all of the morale and cohesion rules, which I want to do. You have to keep these separate, and it goes without saying that per the rules, I divvied up the unit IDs in such a way that I can actually tell which units go to which formation here, because otherwise, other than that, you can't tell. But I do use the unit IDs to create 3 different forces. So the setup, we kind of already went over that. The Egyptians, they are all one force. And so I have a marker on that. They have their own player 8 over there. This is their morale for their light infantry force. And their current morale is 4. So the Egyptians are made up of, they have a 6-pounder AT gun and 1 commander, 1 engineer, 1 medium machine gun, and 11 light infantry. 1 light truck, which I'll use to pull the 6-pounder AT gun, and you do get 4 dummies. I thought a little bit about should I use dummies when I'm solitaring or not. Yeah, I'm just skipping. I am skipping the dummies. I should point out though, I did make 1 modification to the order of battle for the Israelis. The half-track mounted infantry have 1 commander. They have 1 commander, but the commander has no wheels. And it did not make any sense to me that all these infantry would be advancing in half-tracks and the commander would be running alongside trying to keep up. So I gave him a simple jeep. It's not an armed jeep. It only gives the commander transportation so he can keep up with his forces. I didn't have to change anything to the Egyptian order of battle other than skipping the 4 dummies. The Egyptians get 4 bunkers and 6 entrenchments. They're all under here. And again, the 2 Meteor fighter bombers. They have to set up at this elevation, and we'll be talking more about elevation, but basically they have to set up in this elevation or higher. So they are set up appropriately. And then winning. The Israeli player wins by exiting 15 armed units off the east map edge by the end of the game. That is that's a steep, which is good. That's actually a steep victory condition. Now it just says armed units. Quickly, I decided that they're not talking about, a medium truck has no armament on it. At the bottom, it only has a defensive value of 1 on the left. It has a carrying capacity of 2, and it has a movement allowance of 8, and it is considered restricted wheel movement class. Otherwise, you can see it has no armament, and so that's what I assume they mean by the Israelis have to exit 15 or more armed units. So I'm assuming that armed would include a half-track because it has the armament there. It has the 2 P range of 2 there, and obviously the infantry and other combat units. So I assume those are all armed units. So the Israelis have to exit 15 or more of those off the east map edge by the end of the game. So 12 turns to, basically 12 turns to run this gauntlet, essentially. Now, the one good caveat is that every 2 Egyptian units eliminated count as 1 Israeli unit exited. So as I see it, the Israelis have to run this gauntlet, but they can also, if they want to try to stop and destroy enough Egyptians, they can also reach their victory, I'm thinking. And the Egyptian player wins by preventing the Israeli player from achieving his goal. So interesting. So that's all ambush at Mitla Pass. I'll just say a quick, why this scenario. When I was in school, quite a long time ago. This would be a little over 20 years ago. I did I guess you could call it a semester research paper, focused research paper on the Suez-Sinai War, 1956 war. And so reading about this Mitla Pass event, I remember very vividly. So being able to play out this event during the 56 Suez-Sinai War is definitely of huge interest to me. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if the Israeli high cohesion, their elite infantry status, and their mortar can compensate for the Egyptians' defensive positions and Meteor fighter bombers. This will be interesting, and we will return at some point to this.